If you want to moist mount a dragon, you better be ready to dock her. If you don't know what docking is, you better Google it, because we're talking about the lore from the mating manual, which is coming from the world where my manga's The Night of Slaughter and Devil's Deal takes place in, so let's go. The first thing that you need to know is that when it comes to dragons, so far within the lore, there are three general types. The first is the European style dragon, which we're used to seeing in Dungeons and Dragons and other main media. The second style is the Eastern Dragon, which is more serpentile for those of you who don't know what it looks like. And we call those Sky Dancers. And the last one is called a Blitz Dragon. And the Blitz Dragon is an original style for the series because think of a dragon mixed with a jet fighter. That's right, when these cute little boys fly, they don't actually flap their wings, they use propulsion based on magic to pull air through their wings. And they are traditionally made of magic. And all three of these dragon types have different genital sets and ways that they conceive. So if somebody wants to try to breed with a dragon in dragon form, it's important that you understand how to breed with each type. So let's start with the European style dragon. And so right now we're just working on the layouts and we're just drafting things up, so that's why everything looks so rough compared to normal diagrams like the Kobold here. So give me some time and I'll get this refined. But at the back of the Hot Pocket, you'll notice that the cervix doesn't look like a cervix. It looks like it's almost got a dragon's mouth. And that's because a dragon European style dong is a lot different than what you're used to seeing. In fact, the hole for this thing is absolutely massive, enough that it wraps around what this is known as the cervical port. And once it's mounted up, whenever they actually jizz, they squirt like a fire hose. The mouth of the cervical port opens up, collects everything, and puts it into the back of the cervical port. Actually, I guess this would be a better image of it. And it basically fills this area up. And as you notice, there are multiple sphincters here. There are three that we can see. And that's because after the cervical port is filled up, it basically closes his mouth, seals this area off, and there are actually two areas on the upper and lower side. And what these things contain is a chemical. The lower one has a liquid chemical that basically shoots out, fills that chamber up, and basically starts looking at all the DNA in the sperm to identify any damaged sperm and any genetic material that this dragon heretically doesn't see as advantageous. They do this because dragon DNA is containing a high amount of wild DNA. So in order to prevent some abomination from forming when two dragons are mating, basically this chemical is going in and purging and reviewing everything to make sure it's going to give a proper dragon. And then once that chemical is done purging everything, then later on, it could be several days, it could be weeks, it could be months down the line, the second organ releases another chemical from the opposite side, but this one is a gas. And this gas basically starts converting the wild DNA into advantageous things that heretically dragons have found very useful, and basically creates a sense of evolution to keep them healthier, to give their breath weapons more damage. Because on top of wild DNA, dragons have a really cool feature called heretical DNA analysis, which basically looks at the experience based on the stress of the dragon to identify things that may not be advantageous for their biological function. And then it basically seeks to correct that with the next generation. So this has allowed dragons to evolve very rapidly while not changing in appearance a ton, but internally, dragons have been always able to stay healthy in almost every era because of this function. Then after basically both purging, getting all the DNA right, it shoots it out into the actual uterus. And then once it goes into the uterus, there's an organ on the actual top of the uterus that contains all the eggs. And once basically the uterus is filled with sperm, then it basically releases a dust that is full of little eggs. And what happens is these little bitty eggs all basically swarm the sperm, start to attaching themselves to it. And what happens is similar to how an orc sperm basically has the bale spear to shoot into other sperm and basically suck the DNA, and it basically does a combining situation. Dragon eggs and sperm do something similar, is these eggs will actually start to basically gather around the sperm and basically stop it from moving and form a shell around it. And this will form the initial stage of a fetus. And this is when the actual sperm will lose its tail, and as more eggs start to get deposited throughout the year, it'll basically continue to grow and develop. But there is a termination point multiple times throughout the gestation period for these eggs, because there are lots of eggs actually being formed. And so chemicals and cells are released that basically continuously check to kind of almost vet these fetuses. And if it doesn't find that they are the best candidates at each stage, then it will eliminate them. But once everything is done, the eggs get hardened and they become what we would traditionally consider a clutch of dragon eggs. Then the last organ involved in the actual reproductive system takes place, as this thing is a little bitty mouth here. And what it does is it goes in and it basically grabs the egg, sucks it up, pulls it around the uterus, back into the cervical port, and guess what happens? The cervical port opens up and it basically pushes the egg back into the ha-ha scene and it falls out. And that is a very rough, brief description of how dragon mating works, specifically for the European dragon. So if you like the mating manual information, go ahead and grab our Ruby Gold sub so you can see its development, give me some feedback, or get your own original character into the lore with a diamond sub. But as always, the mangas are free to read digitally. Just see the bio description, or you can grab a physical copy today while I still have a few left in stock.